Hello, hello. You're listening to the Better Workday podcast with me, Niamh Moynihan. You and I might have very different jobs, but I bet we have at least one thing in common when it comes to work, and that's PowerPoint. Love it or loathe it, presentations are a staple of today's workplace. And so in this week's episode, we are taking a look at a very tangible element of the workday, PowerPoint presentations. And to help us learn how to use this tool to support us at work instead of stress us out, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by my good friend, Fiona Walsh. Fiona, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Niamh. Thank you for having me.
I am so glad you're here. So just for those that don't know, we've been talking nearly daily for about 3 or 4 years. You've been to my wedding. We catch up multiple times a year. And like this, I finally have got you on the podcast. It's because you're so busy with clients and stuff. So I'm delighted to have you here. Do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself to the listeners and then we'll get right into it?
Yeah, my name's Fiona Walsh. My business is Empower Presentations and I am PowerPoint MVP. That's Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. And I'm the only one in Ireland, which is great. And one of about 50 around the world, I think. So I'm a Microsoft trainer, but I specialise in PowerPoint training. And my background is in corporate. So I have over 25 years of working in corporate in various different roles, coming across various different issues with PowerPoint and scenarios of using it. I got into PowerPoint training when I worked for a large company and was IT manager and was hosting internal events and also helping people from R&D go and present their findings in global conferences. And that's how I kind of got into my niche at PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah. And like you worked in like cosmetics and everything, all sorts of industries. Isn't that right? Like all across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still waiting for you to give me the formula to make my perfect foundation. But, in the meantime, we'll talk about PowerPoint. So as you know, I keep these episodes short, practical, to the point. So if you were to give me one piece of advice in terms of how to make my use of PowerPoint more productive, more efficient, and less like, I'm going to die from having to watch 355 slides, what would the first piece of advice you give someone be?
One piece of advice is don't start in PowerPoint.
What? I'm sorry? I thought you said you were a PowerPoint trainer.
I am, but I'm also a presentation trainer as well. So I don't just train people on how to use PowerPoint. I train them on the whole process.
Okay.
And the biggest mistake people make is they open up PowerPoint and they haven't thought about what they're doing and they think that they can get started in PowerPoint and they haven't done any planning as to what they want to say, what they want their presentation to look like. They haven't even thought about, they just open PowerPoint, they've got a blank canvas and they start putting things together on slides, even though they don't actually know what they want their presentation to be like.
Okay, so I'm mortified now. I'm really glad that I don't have a video version of the podcast because I think I'm blushing because like you've just described what I literally do. And like I do presentations for a living. So I open up the presentation and I just literally go pick a format, title, subtitle, and I just start like writing stuff. And then, I kind of like shape it into some form of a thing. And then I put some notes with it. And I'm now wondering like what do I do instead? Because I can't imagine what I could do instead of that. So like,
Okay.
what do I do?
Right. Well, I think very few people can open PowerPoint and be creative and, or other presentation software and put stuff together. A few may be able to, but I'm saying the majority of people in the corporate environment are not going to be able to do that. Okay. So let's think of an analogy of, say, building a house. Would you go out and just buy a ton of bricks and start putting bricks together? You don't know, you haven't done any foundations for a start. You don't know how high your house is going to be. You don't know what floor space. You haven't even thought about the design or what it's going to look like. You're not just going to start putting bricks down, are you?
We'll say no. I feel like in this story, the Three Little Pigs, I'm the pigs whose house got blown down straight away. But of course, no, you wouldn't because it's ridiculous. It's a waste of time.
Exactly. Everyone will be laughing at you saying, what are you doing? You know what you're doing here. You can start and just lay bricks just for the sake of laying bricks. And it's the same with PowerPoint. So the way I advise people to start is to either have Post-it notes. Okay. Where you could write ideas down. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to do this, by the way, for every presentation, but if you've got a big presentation, an important presentation, it might only be 10 minutes, but it might be to the executive team and it might be a big update that you need to maybe secure funding for a project or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Or get people to take action. So I would be looking at post-its and, putting ideas down. I would be, first of all, thinking of a hook. So what are you going to do to get your audience listening in the first place? You can't just start your presentation by saying, "Hi, my name's Fiona and I'm talking about," do you know what I mean? You can't start like that because you could lose people. If they've got a whole day of presentations, they'll be like, "Oh God, another presentation." Switching off. You want to get people's attention. You need to get a hook to get them engaged.
But the hook idea, so like we know on social media, like when people are putting up content, they put hooks up, like on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. And so I'm aware of the concept, but what's interesting is you're saying actually if you're presenting to your colleagues, you also need to hook them. So it's not just for, content creators and stuff. It's every single employee who's creating a presentation that they have to hook whoever's watching the presentation from the beginning. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to give you an example here. My daughter did her first secondary school project recently. So she's in she's in second year. So she did her first project and she picked a topic, which is something she's interested in, swimming. She's a competitive swimmer. And she worked really hard in the presentation and she came to practice in front of the family. So she stood in front of us and she said, "Hello, my name is Martha and
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about," and I went, whoa, stop. I said, "I know you've done lots of practice, but you can't start like that." She was a bit upset with me.
Thanks, Mom.
Said, "Yeah, thanks, Mum." But that's, I said, we have to come up with better start than that. We have to come up with a hook. So I explained the concept of a hook to her and she came up with this hook. So I'm going to give you this hook, right? And then I'll explain what it was about afterwards.
Okay.
The hook that she said in her 3-minute presentation to the rest of the class and the teacher: "Would you take drugs for money?"
Stop the lights.
That's what she said in her presentation. Now I had to give you the context because the context around that is that there is a competition called the Enhanced Games that will be on, I think, in May in Las Vegas, and it is professional Olympic type athletes that are taking part, but they are taking steroids under a controlled environment.
Okay.
They're getting paid to enter. So we have an Irish swimmer who's taking part, swimming, athletics, so sprinting. I think it's 50 freestyle for swimming. I think it's a 100-meter sprint for athletics. And we've also got weightlifters as well taking part. So it's 3 sports.
Okay.
And we have some Irish people, definitely one Irish swimmer taking part. And they're getting paid, I think it's $150,000 to take part. And there's various bonuses if they win or break world records.
Okay. Nice.
So her presentation was about that and pros and cons, basically, of what she was thinking of that as a competitive athlete herself. But the point was, what a great hook.
What a great hook. And
You know what I mean?
so she brought a question that she'd probably ask towards the end of the conversation, really, and she brought it right up to the front.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm guessing, because I know you're also very good at, and you do a lot of work in the co-pilot area, not to get ahead of myself, but I'm guessing if someone here is listening and if they're struggling with the whole concept of hooks, like if it's not something that you're used to doing or you're kind of wondering how to apply it to a work context, like how do you do that for a quarterly finance update kind of a thing, I'm guessing Copilot and those tools can help you once you have the foundation, the scaffolding of your
Yeah.
presentation. They can help you with that. Would
Yeah.
that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you Copilot on Android, I think it's on iPhone as well, has a new feature now which is called Speak, so you can have a dialogue.
Oh,
So you
handy.
can say, "Oh, this is the concept that I'm doing." You can talk to it, have a good chat with it, have a talk about this is what my presentation, this is what my ideas are. Could you help me come up with a hook? And it'll help you come up with something that might be meaningful. It has to be something that's going to be meaningful and that works for you, not just what AI suggests for you. It's going to have to be something that
Makes sense.
you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Okay, so I've not gone to Woodies and bought loads of bricks. Okay, I've stopped. Right. Instead, I've gone to buy post-it notes. So I've
Yeah.
got my ideas out, loads of post-it notes all over the desk. I'm thinking about what the hook could be. So what do I do next?
Okay, so you've got your ideas, you've got your hook, you've got ideas of what you want to cover during your presentation on your post-it notes. Post-its are great because you can move them around. That's why we say post-its, because you might say, well, that idea comes before that idea and this idea, we move them around. I'm going to come back to social media again because you mentioned the hook and having hooks and, short
Yep.
video reels. You also need a call to action at the
Okay.
end. All right, so that's something people don't think about. And it's not a call to action like social media, buy now or pay, 5 times as much tomorrow. But you could be telling your audience what you want them to do. And that could be the next steps are, I want you to approve this. You know what I mean? If you're talking to executive committee, that could be the next, that could be a call to action. Next steps, what you want them to do. I mean, you're giving a presentation. So at the end of the day, you want somebody to do something. Otherwise, why are you bothering talking?
Well, of course. I mean, when you say it like that, it makes
Exactly. Yes.
But it's just, I suppose, from a work context, and like, I spent over like 20 odd years in the workplace. Do you know what I mean? But I never would have thought of the concept of a call to action. Now, of course, now that you say it, I see it everywhere in workplace presentation. But like on my presentation checklist of getting it ready, I never would have put hook and I never would have put call to action. But I can see by adding those two things to the checklist, it makes the presentation more, I suppose, effective. But I want to come back a second to post-its because I just think they're the game changer because you said something there that you can move the post-its around. And what I find with digital creation, let's say if you have a slide deck, I suppose it's less easy for people to kind of jiggle things or move things around. Like you put it in a format and then that format is almost fixed because I don't know, does your creativity shut down or we don't see it in the same way, but like that is the presentation now. But there's something about post-its that allow you to freely move them. So do you see there's a benefit there in structuring the presentation then, Fiona, when you give yourself that chance to be a bit more fluid?
I do, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, in PowerPoint, if we're talking about PowerPoint in particular,
Yeah.
there's a function called See All Slides where you see all of your slides
Yeah.
like Post-its. So you can move them around there, but most people don't know that that exists. So they're just looking at it in a linear fashion, the way you would see it
Okay.
when you're creating a slide, so that it's a bit more difficult to drop things around and move the slides around if we do need to reorder. But I think one of the biggest problems is that if we don't do this and we just open PowerPoint and start working on a slide, you've heard the phrase killing your darlings. Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in PowerPoint, that could be you've spent ages on this one slide. You've spent half a day creating this slide that you think is absolutely wonderful. But the more you work on the presentation, you realize it's actually not relevant to the presentation. But then
No.
you want to keep it in. And that's the problem, you see, because you haven't planned. Then you're trying to structure a presentation around this amazing slide that probably isn't that amazing anyway, but one you spend a lot of time on that you absolutely love it. It's like, this is great. And then you're trying to fit a presentation around that slide. And that then means that you aren't really thinking of what's best for the audience and what's best for the message that you're trying to get across. And that's one of the
I
common.
feel this should be a private PowerPoint therapy session and not a podcast that I'm going to share. Just because I feel like you're speaking directly to me, Fiona, like which is obviously great. And I hope that those listening, I bet you there's loads that feel the same as me, really called out on this. And like, just so people don't feel a bit guilty, we have to remind people, look, everyone falls into these traps because you're at work, you're busy, you're trying to get things
Yeah.
done. Very few people get like whatever about tool training, like PowerPoint training, but like you have that distinction there, like training on how to create and deliver presentations, which is far more than the tool. Because all the things we've spoken about so far, like I use Google Workspace and I use Canva and I use Apple Keynote. I go across all of them, and they all have those basic functionality, but it's how you use it is what's important. So like let's decide we're going to go back to basics and say, look, do you mind all the presentations you created before now? If you've one coming up next week, what can people do maybe in 30 minutes? So it's not going to add loads to their workday, but it's actually going to make a very tangible difference to the quality of that presentation. And more importantly, to get people to show up to the next presentation you're going to deliver. Do you know what I mean? So they're not dreading you coming with a deck, that they're actually looking forward to what you have to say. So what can people do?
When you say in 30 minutes, do you mean 30 minutes of planning?
Yeah, 30 minutes of prep, yeah. So 30
So,
minutes, like, that they wouldn't have spent before, that might save them time later or might create more impact, but, like, we don't want them to be spending hours trying to, as you said, do loads of work because that has its own cost.
yeah. Well, definitely you've got your planning stages there where I'm talking about thinking about a hook, thinking about how you're going to wrap up. That's the most important thing. Never finish with a question slide, ever. You can have a question slide, but you
Sorry?
always finish. Never finish with a question slide. Not if you're standing up presenting. If you're training, it's a different scenario. If you're standing in front of a group of people and you're expecting, you're actually presenting, so you're not expecting to be maybe interrupted and you ask for questions. Have you ever seen, I'll ask you the question then, Niamh. Have you ever seen a scenario where someone's been presenting, maybe a town hall, something like that? They stand up and they say, any questions? And nobody asks any questions. And there's this deathly silence. And then the next person standing, hovering in the wings, they're like, do I have
Ah,
time yet? And that person standing there going, how long do I leave for any questions? And it's all really embarrassing. And then they don't know where to sit down. And there's this really awkward kind of moment. Well, if you had a summary slide, if no one asks any questions, you just, moving on to wrap up. And then you've got your summary or your call to action, whatever that finish is.
oh, it's your backup plan. It's your backup plan.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so
Yeah.
so and it's funny because I don't actually ask for questions when I deliver to clients. But again, because I'm external now, I suppose I thought that different rules apply. When you're when you're presenting to your colleagues versus when you're
Yeah.
presenting to clients. But I think what you're saying here, to be honest, is that it doesn't matter who you're presenting to, the same ground rules apply across the board. So I have my post-it notes. I have to think about my hook. I have to think about my CTA, what actions I want them to take. And if I want to allow space for questions, I have to have my backup plan directly after that question slide, which is a summary of the key points so that there's no awkward silence and people don't feel that they have to try and ask a stupid question just to kind of
Yeah.
fill the void.
And if you also need to have a plan, if you're going to ask for questions, you need to have a plan for if you get asked a question that you can't answer, then what are you going to do?
And what you do.
What I do, if I get asked something in training I don't know the answer to, I have a flip chart and I would write it on the flip chart and take it away with me and say, right, I'm going to investigate that and come back to it.
Yeah. And I think I give the exact same advice actually, no matter what scenario you're in. If you don't know the answer, to say, I don't have the answer to that right now. Can I come back to you? And of course, the other person's going to say yes. And as long as you follow through, then
Yeah.
the trust in your ability to get the answers is maintained and there's absolutely no issue.
Yeah. But I think as a presenter, you need to be comfortable saying that. And you need to be aware that there might be a scenario where if you ask questions, you might have to say, I don't know the answer to that one. I'm going to make a note of it and come back to you.
And I think that's probably one of the few lines in a presentation you might even practice rehearsing word for word, just so you can get confident saying that sentence so you know how you want to phrase it and so it lands right. Like, so for you, like you said around the hook piece, like that it feels like you're saying it, that you're comfortable with how you say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, because you were asking me in 30 minutes, what can people do? If they've done all the rest of the stuff, what I would say in 30 minutes is to practice the delivery so that you can deliver it in the time you've been allocated.
Oh, yes. And on that, I have started using PowerPoint for one reason only, and that's the coach. This PowerPoint presentation coach thing that
Brilliant.
allows me to see how fast or slow I'm speaking.
Yeah.
So would you suggest using that if you've got PowerPoint?
I would. So, yeah, presenter coach, I think it's called, is absolutely amazing. That's really, really good. You can get live feedback while you're presenting. As you said there, it tells you slow down, which is usually me because I speak fast, or gives you feedback on filler words and other things. There's also a feature called rehearse timings.
Okay.
You have a very, very strict timeline. Let's say you have 10 minutes to present for, and it's very strict. That's a great tool because you can practice the presentation, go through the presentation, and at the end, it will tell you how much time you spent on each slide.
Oh.
If you need to cut time, you know where that's been. Now, this is right at the end. This is when you've got your, I'm not going to say script, but you know what you're going to say. You've got your slide ready and you're just doing this before finishing up. That's a really powerful tool. I'm working with a lecturer from UCC at the moment on a big research grant that he's applying for, and he's got 10 minutes. There's 4 days of presentations, so 40 applicants. I think there's 10 people maybe get the grant. And the first thing I said to him was, how long's the presentation for? 10 minutes. And I said, are they strict? And he said, yes, you absolutely get cut off after 10 minutes. So I said, right, this tool's going to be really good for you because maybe you've got 8 minutes, you can flesh out that long. You haven't spoken much about that slide. Or the other way around, you've got 12 minutes, you've got to cut 2 minutes from somewhere. And you could say, well, I spent 4 minutes on that topic. That's too much. Therefore, I need to cut that topic down or make that a bit more succinct when I'm actually delivering the presentation.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking through different work scenarios there. Like we talk an awful lot about meetings, about like good meetings, effective meetings, and just respecting other people's time. And so this idea of maybe holding ourselves accountable to being, more timely presenters, like obviously it's good for you to develop that skill, but also you're respecting your audience. And then again, when you have to come to them with the next idea, they trust you when you say this will take 10 minutes. So they're more likely to accept the invite to be presented to.
Absolutely. And also then you've got tools in PowerPoint when you're delivering where you can keep an eye on the time. So you can see if you're on track with the time. And if you're not, you can navigate to the end slide again in PowerPoint without showing the ones in between. So you can kind of wrap up then and people don't know that you've missed a few slides out, which is also very nice. And you can finish on time, as you've said, respecting their time, which I think is very important because if you're somebody that goes over when they're presenting, what's going to happen? There's a presentation from that person. Everyone's, oh God, we're going to be 10 minutes over here today. And, they're switching off already because they know it's a long presentation. It isn't going to be the time that you've said.
Come here. Like, obviously I know what you do because we talk, as I said, most days. But like to try and condense it into 20 minutes for the basics, I'm blown away. I am blown away. I'm so glad you decided to join me. I'm delighted that we're able to cover so much. And I know it's not everything, but I think it'll make a real difference, to anyone who wants to try and take those steps. I have Post-it notes. They're in the drawer, so I think I'm just going to take them out and see how I get on. But Fiona, thank you so much. Will we put the details of where to get in touch with you in the show notes in case people want to follow up after? Anyone who does training or anything like that, would that be helpful?
That'd be great. Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to find me.
Brilliant. Well, we'll find you there. And listen, you're an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.